Love you too.
We have some breaking news this evening. A local man has been placed under arrest for child abuse.
6-year-old hero dies trying to save 12-year-old sister.
Right now in Tampa, a couple behind bars tonight accused of starving a pair of teenagers so badly they're in the hospital.
Currently, there are approximately 415,000 children in foster care in the United States alone. This system has been in effect since 1853, when Charles Loring Brace created foster care, laying the groundwork for our current system. While the system he created in 1853 during immigration was sufficient at its time, the system has now grown drastically, resulting in too many children and not enough caregivers. Children are currently being taken away from their homes due to parental abuse, neglect, or a parent's inability to meet the basic needs of their children. The creator of the foster care system, Charles Loring Brace, was a minister living and working in New York City. Every day, he saw hundreds of orphan children living on the streets. These orphans were the children of immigrant families who were pouring into the United States in search of a better life. Many of these children were abandoned and left to fend for themselves. He believed that institutional care for children was insufficient for children's development. He was determined to help the orphan children living on the street obtain an education and a safe, stable home. Brace came up with a solution to address the growing problem. The solution was the orphan trains, which provided homes for over 200,000 children between 1854 and 1930. He transferred children from East Coast cities to rural towns in the Midwest, South, and even the West Coast. The children were given a safe home away from the dangerous streets of New York City. Brace then became the director of the Children's Aid Society in New York City. His work made it possible for millions of children to have caregivers and a home. The foster care system developed by Brace has come a long way since it first started. In 1909, the first White House Conference on the Care of Dependent Children took place. The conference announced that poverty should not be enough of a reason to remove a child from their home, and if the child did need to be, they would be taken to an alternative home. The conference also discussed what the standards were for children going into foster care and what were the reasons as to why they would need to be removed from a home. This ensured that children would only be removed from their homes when necessary, and when they were put in a sufficient home. Then, in 1924, the first major outcome study by Abraham Maslow called How Foster Children Turn Out was published. Only until this study came out, people realized the psychological impacts unstable and unloving homes had on children.
When you're talking about the psychological development of the child or the developmental needs of the child, if you take a look at one of the theorists, Abraham Maslow, his theory, if you take a look at a triangle and the base of that triangle, the first thing that children need is that physical sense of safety. Then you can move on to that level of belongingness and love and access some of those things, but you need that physical safety.
In 1969, the Office of Child Development by President Nixon was established to coordinate and administer Head Start and U.S. Children's Bureau functions. Nixon said,
"And let us look down into the faces of our children. Is there anything in the world that should stand in their way? He dreams the dreams of a child. And yet when he awakens to a living nightmare of poverty, neglect, and despair."
This speech gave the public an idea of how vital mental stimulation is for children's development, which was a big moment in history.
In the 1880s to 1930s, children were placed into foster homes, typically because their parents or guardians were deceased. They were not taken out of homes for abuse, as it was socially accepted and legal. The abuse actually occurred in the foster homes. In New York City, in 1807, an 8-year-old orphan named Mary Ellen Wilson received daily whippings and beatings at her foster homes. There was no organization to protect abused children, so the attorneys for the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, obviously something more needed to be done to protect children, especially children in foster homes. In the early 1900s, social agencies began to pay and supervise foster parents. The government began state inspections of foster homes. Records were kept to increase accountability, and children's needs were considered when placements were made. Historically, group foster homes were abundant with abuse of children. Currently, they are better regulated and monitored than in the past, so the amount of abuse has decreased. Today, there are many different types of foster care homes that children can be placed in. This ensures a child will be placed in the home that best suits them and their needs. Short-term foster and kinship carers provide full-time, ongoing, day-to-day care for children for up to 2 years, while the Department of Communities Child Safety Services work towards reunifying the child with their family. Long-term care involves providing children a safe and stable home as they are unable to live with their own family. Long-term carers commit to the ongoing full-time care of a child up to 18 years of age. Intensive foster care requires a carer who has a passion to care for a child with complex needs or may have specialized skills or training to be able to support them in this role. Short break care assists foster and kinship carers who are supporting a full-time child. Foster carers who are able to provide a short break to a child are able to choose when they can provide care. Emergency carers are available to provide short-term care at short notice, evenings or on weekends, for children who urgently need a place to stay. One of the current problems with foster care is the lack of social workers. Social workers do not have enough time to regulate and check in on each home and child frequently enough. Less regulation can lead to abuse and neglect by foster parents, which are the reasons why children were removed from their homes in the first place. Social workers are also often given very risky tasks. As a social worker, you don't know what you're getting into.
One of the most wonderful things in our country is the foster system, because children are no longer put in an orphanage. But within the foster system, you need the strength of an actual system working and supporting both the families and the children. And that's very important. Unfortunately, we do not have enough social workers in this country. It could be for a variety of reasons. It's very complex work, it can be very risky work, and it doesn't often pay a lot of money.
There are also just not enough people involved. The foster care system as a whole is challenged with not enough foster families. In an ideal world, there would be several available foster families for each child, so the best appropriate match for a placement could be made. The reality is that foster home placements are limited. A second issue is that the clinical needs of the children and youth are increasing. More significant trauma, mental health, exposure to substance abuse, and domestic violence, identified as being a sexually exploited, trafficked victim. Families are not always equipped with the resources to maintain such a high level of clinical supervision. Greater effort should be taken to strengthen the impoverished communities where foster children often come from. When communities start to break down, the need for foster care grows and the cycle continues.
In 1 year, 3.3 million reports of violence against children occurred. That resulted in 251,764 children placed in the foster care system. Out of that number, 23,439 will age out of foster care. 1 in 5 will become homeless after age 18. 1/2 will be employed at age 24. Less than 3% will earn a college degree. 71% of young women will be pregnant at age 21, and 1 in 4 will experience
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.